has to be talking about two different things. And indeed it does. The second coming of Christ in the broad sense comes in two phases. Once for the church, once for Israel. Once for the church to fulfill his promises to his bride. And secondly, he comes in power to fulfill all the commitments that God has laid down in both the Old and New Testaments for a kingdom on the earth, where he'll take David's throne, etc. And very, very interesting times. Two events. Let's contrast these a different way, by function rather than by reference. In one case, the rapture, there's a translation of all the believers. In the second coming, there's no translation involved. He comes into the earth and sets up his kingdom on the earth, and there's people that live in the earth, they have children, you go in the millennium, there's going to be people that die. It's a different kind of, it's different in some respects, and yet it's not eternity yet. That comes at the end of the 1,000 years. In the rapture, the translated saints go to heaven. In the second coming, translated saints return to the earth with him. Different deal. It's in a different lane of traffic, if I may. In the rapture, the earth isn't judged. He doesn't come to the earth. He meets us in the air. The judgment comes later, the second coming. The earth's judged. Here's perhaps the most important distinction between these two groups of prophecies. In the one case, they're imminent at any moment, and they're signless. There's no sign that needs to precede the rapture, other than the shout, the voice of the archangel, the trump of God. And that's like now. There isn't a precedent set of conditions you can see coming. For the second coming, there is the most documented period of time in the entire Bible. A 7-year history that has more information about it than any other period of time in the Bible. It precedes the second coming. If that starts, you can almost set the date. In fact, there's a mid-course correction. Make sure you're on track. They say the rapture is not in the Old Testament. I don't happen to believe that. I'll show you why. But that's the standard dictum. And of course, second coming is all predicted throughout the Old Testament. Rapture is the believers only. Second coming affects all men on earth. The rapture occurs before the day of wrath, as is so promised. And the second coming concludes the day of wrath. So the rapture has no reference to Satan. He's not a player. In fact, his whole thing, I think, is geared to get him by surprise. Second coming, Satan's bound. When the rapture occurs, that's like a starting gun for Satan, because he knows he's got only a little time. That's part of the game that's going on. The rapture, Jesus comes for his own. Second coming, he comes with his own. That's what the references say in many places. Rapture comes in the air. The second coming comes to the earth. Rapture, he claims his bride. Second coming, he comes with his bride. In the rapture, only his own will see him. It's interesting. After his resurrection, he was only seen by loving eyes, and he was only touched by loving hands. You study the Chronicle very carefully. It's very interesting. Apparently, in the rapture, too, only his own will see him. Second coming, every eye will see him and tremble. Rapture, generally, the Great Tribulation begins. Now, I want to be cautious about this. That's the way it's usually presented. Not necessarily at that instant. But the rapture triggers a series of events that leads to the Great Tribulation. The second coming, the millennium begins. The rapture is the church believers only. Many scholars point out that the Old Testament saints will not be resurrected until after the millennium. That comes as a shock to many, but you can check Daniel 12 to check that out for yourself. So we see the marriage fulfilled, the covenant's been established, 1 Corinthians 11, the purchase price has been paid, 1 Corinthians 6, bride's been set apart, and all kinds of references. That's most of the New Testament, is admonitions to the bride to keep herself apart, preserved. We're reminded of the covenant again in 1 Corinthians 11. The bridegroom left for the Father's house, and we're waiting for 1 Thessalonians 4. So in the next session, we'll take a break, but the next session I'm going to say pattern is prologue. We're going to take a look at strategic structure in the Scripture, and partly for a strategic perspective and partly for some surprises that you may find rather provocative. So let's take a brief period. But as we do, I want you to be thinking about the invitation that Jesus has given to the bride. I go to prepare a place for you. Is he preparing a place for you? Is Jesus busy right now, tonight, preparing a place for you? Are you certain of that? Because that's really what it's all about. And we'll talk more about that in the next session. Let's take a break.